Okay, cool. So, hello to all of Maps's amazing followers. And I know you guys are thrilled to see his face on this afternoon. So, we are the Change Collective Africa, and we are a social enterprise that aims to be catalysts for change in South Africa. And we create platforms where we tell stories and just help the country to do better as citizens and businesses together. So we have invited Mabs to be one of our purpose pioneers on the talk show because he's doing so much, and I think he's just a great person to speak to. Wouldn't you agree, Mabs?
Uh, Thank you, thank you. I don't know I don't know if I'm going to say if I agree or not, but I love that you invited me because now it's like now you've invited me to to my house now, which is my account, and we're doing it here. But yeah, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. Like I was saying on your page right now, love the work that the Change Collective is doing, and hoping I can make some sort of an impact as well on our conversation, and hopefully people will take something from it.
Yeah, hopefully people will take something from it. And Mabs, did you have that earth-shattering moment where you figured out why you're alive and what you want to do, or was it something that grew with you as you grew into yourself?
To be honest, I think it's something that we're consistently and constantly thinking about. I think that's one of the special things about life, where even if you kind of have an idea of exactly what it is that you feel that you're meant to do, you're still kind of constantly working it out. There's always something else that comes up, and it's not quite like that, or not quite like that, and it's just constant altering and forming it to just the way that you like, and you're figuring out as you go along. And I think that's always been a journey that's constantly gone on in my mind. And from a young age, I know that people has always been a part of it. Talking has always been a part of it. Making some sort of a significant impact in people's lives and providing opportunities through what I do has always been part of it. Making people, making things that much better has always been a part of that. You know, creating environments that, if I exist in, will be far more beneficial to others. So anything that I'm involved in needs to be multi-beneficial. Any brand that I work with, anything that I work on, I always want to see how that can be multi-beneficial to others and far more just beyond me. Everything I do needs to always just be bigger than the self. And I think it's always just been
Mm.
surrounded by leaving a mark within people, that once you've passed them, you've crossed them, you've encountered them, that you've left some sort of positivity in their lives, that you've left them a little bit better, and that you've, left some, even if it's just a smile. And I think that that's something that you can make so many different impacts just in that little gesture that can lead to so many other things.
That was really, really profound. Sure. And I think some people have a I think struggle to find it. We had a conversation with Dr. Smile Lex Leo where he said
Mm.
many people are trying to find purpose, but what if it's something that's just unlocked within you? Or I don't know, you walk into a museum one day and it's not that you found it there, it's always been inside of you. Does your
Yeah.
sense of purpose, or let me rather ask you this, what anchors you when you feel lost or when you're uncertain in life? What is the thing that anchors you?
It's a really good question, and I think even just to further on and elaborate on what Lex had said the other day on this channel, is the fact that I think that it is something that is within you. So what anchors me a lot of the time is remembering and knowing exactly who I am, what my why is. Am I being true to myself? Is this something that I truly believe in? Is it causing any damage or harm to others? Is it something that drives me, that motivates me, that makes me want to wake up, that makes me feel like I'm using my time in a worthwhile manner? Is it something that's building up to where I want to go? I think all those kinds of things, it's never just one thing. It's all those kinds of things that you process in your thoughts. even in the simplest way of just writing it down on a piece of paper so you can clear your vision. That helps me in a big way. That helps me anchor in a big way. I can be quite eccentric sometimes, a little bit weird at times. I can be quite literal about needing to be anchored sometimes. If I'm all over the place, I'll literally just lie on the ground of my house, you know, and just try and really just come back to being a kid again and allowing yourself to play in your mind so that you can kind of build up again to find that direction and find those little sparks that bring you joy. And then how often can you make those sparks go off? And if you can make them go off as often as possible, then you're definitely walking in the right path of where you should be. And I think that's what it's about at the end of the day. You know, how do you try and find as many of those little sparks as possible? And how do you try and create and just allow them to both happen, and be around you, and not overthink certain sparks that are staring you in the face, and allow those to encourage and trigger and catalyze you to be better.
Do you think 5-year-old maps or kid maps would have expected you to have done all of the things that you've done now? Do you think that your purpose or your vision might have changed along that time? I don't know if maybe you want to be a fireman when you were younger.
He wanted to do a lot of things. He wanted to do numerous things. He didn't know if he wanted to be an astronaut or if he wanted to be a professional sportsman of some kind. You know, professional golfer or professional soccer player was always kind of like the first one when I was really small. And then you kind of like realize your path, and you know, it's being kind of influenced by other paths that aren't necessarily yours. He wanted to also be a lawyer. He wanted to be an architect, and he also, as he got older, I also wanted to go into something a little bit more technical. I've always enjoyed things like physics and aeronautical engineering. And I don't think he would have seen himself going down this path. You know, this path for me was actually something that came about through taking a lot of chances. It wasn't something that I had designed in my mind, that I'd always desired and wanted. It's something that I allowed for, you know, through preparation and through commitment and through work, that whenever there was a small gap or small opportunity, I was able to take it with both hands and just try it out. And then things would work out here and work out there, and obviously not work out and not work out and not work out, but getting back up and making sure that those things work out. I always say that with a lot of the things that you do, things that you want to do, that you dream of doing, that it's really important that you allow yourself to put in as much work as possible to get to that point. But put it out there and decide that this is what you want, and kind of work towards that vision, and the opportunities will come about. But you also need to be ready. If you're not ready, then you haven't fulfilled your end of the bargain. And if you're not fulfilling your end of the bargain, those opportunities will come and go. Those ideas will come and go. Your need to be inventive or innovative or intuitive at a certain time, when there's that gap, if you don't take that gap, then it's going to come and go as well. And I think it's a lot of the time with life, so much of it is built on luck and chance, and then there's obviously the big portion which derives a lot from you and your willingness to work and your desire to get to where you want to, but also how willing you are to prepare for whatever vision you have for yourself. But too many times do people have that, and then they'll sit back and expect it to come to them. And if it does, they're just not ready, and then it will, you know, kind of quickly move on to someone else. And I think that's always that chess game of life, that you always need to know what your next move is, so that if you are encroached from the other side of the universe's moves or God's moves or whatever it might be, that you're just in the right line to take that piece when the opportunity comes.
That point about readiness is that's a bomb, man. Like, he just like, because readiness is such a thing. Like, you could have the biggest thing in the world happen to you, but if you're not ready yet, I mean, it can lead you, it can either distract you, or it can expose things within you that are not, that you haven't developed yet.
Absolutely. And in that regard, for me, whenever people say, so if we're looking at the things that you do, and try to give us a bit of a sense of what your mind would be like in one word. And really, more than anything else, I always say, curious. I am one of the most curious people that you will ever encounter. I want to know as much as possible constantly. I want to lap up information. I see something and I think it's incredible, and I take a liking to it, and I want to see if I am able to do it. And I take that chance and I do it. And if it's not quite for me, then I know it's not quite for me. But if it's something that I feel like, ooh, this brings me so much joy and I could have something in there, then I'll work at it and I'll work at it and I'll work at it. And then it eventually works out, you know. And I'd say a lot of the stuff that I've been successful in, obviously I do that because it's very relative, but a lot of the stuff I've been successful in has been because I've been willing to just take the chance and be curious enough, take that leap, and and just allow the rest to come together. And you know, it either works out for you or it doesn't. But I'm a big I get very hungry for certain emotions that people run away from, which are feelings like failure and fear. I kind of get weirdly excited by that,
Really?
and you know, yeah. I think for me, and it's something I'm always try whenever I have these conversations. I always want to constantly get across. It doesn't matter how many times I have to repeat it, but I always try and ensure that if I'm about to do something and there isn't a massive risk of me failing, or there isn't a big fear attached to it, then I'm sitting in my comfort zone. Then I'm not
Yeah.
actually dreaming. I'm not actually pushing myself hard enough. Then I'm not
Yeah.
actually taking any risk that I know it's going to work out. But then where's the reward in that? The real reward lies in you stepping out of that comfort zone, taking on that fear, realizing that there's no way of sidestepping the fear or going over it. You have to go right through your
Right
fear,
through it.
and you have to fully embrace it and take all the shots that come at you while you're trying to make it through the other side. And the rewards the rewards that lie on the other side are so beautiful. And even if it's a small thing, you know how scared you were of that thing. And it's all those little steps. Something like approaching a conversation with someone who you are hoping can take you to that next level, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone to go and do that, breaking that fear. Something that you are asked to take responsibility in your workplace and to go address your colleagues, and say something, but you get stage fright. You don't like speaking in front of people, but you know, you have to get over that if you're wanting to
Yeah.
go somewhere, or you'll always be left behind. You know, we can't trust you with taking on any big, well, anything that will push you out of your comfort zone. So whenever it comes to those things, it doesn't always have to be starting a business. You know, it doesn't always have to be something that big. It's always these small things that build up all that little bit of confidence within you to take on the bigger
Yeah.
things. And I think that's how systematic I like to be about everything. Two main
Yeah.
things that I always kind of focus on, and they're actually my words of 2020, is to be as intentional as possible and be deliberate as possible in my actions. And I've always tried to do
Intentional and
that, and now I'm
deliberate.
kind of, yeah, I've always tried to do that. And now I'm just a whole lot more conscious of it, where with the smallest things, I take into account that experience. If I'm whatever it is, how I'm addressing someone, how I'm eating something, drinking something, writing something, I want to do it as intentionally as possible and savor it and really think about these small things, because that starts to really make your mind quite susceptible to each and every one of your actions, and you can realize all the smallest things, and the little greatness that lies in those nuggets of mundane.
Okay, guys, the interview's over. Goodbye. I think we've covered everything. Wow,
Sorry, I talk too
I
much.
think this, no, it's important because that's it's rich what you are saying. And it's full. And I think I'm hoping that everybody who's watching is gaining something from it, because many times, you see Maps as the person who's, in the front end of a brand, or who is on stage, or who's like, but to get into the workings of what motivates you is really refreshing. And before I get to my next question, something really interesting, the news channel that I was working at last year as a producer. So there's this massive struggle for parking. And I was working on the morning show. So whenever I would park just across from where it is, Man, there's like a row of restaurants there, and there was this one space. Every time I get there, you know, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. There's like paint buckets and it's under construction, and I was always asking myself, what is happening here? Then one morning, we were busy with the trending content for the show, and they were like, "No, man, this is Maps's restaurant," and I was like, "Really?" It was so weird. It was like I've been parking my car here for like weeks, only to find out that there's this amazing restaurant that's coming. I'm sorry that I've never actually been there. I've never had a burger
No,
there,
it's
but I
fine.
worked right across the building. Imagine.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of? I mean, there's so much talk on Twitter and a lot of joy around it, and just the name already makes people smile. So, what's the purpose behind it, and how has the experience of being a restaurant owner been?
So just on your point of, saying sorry you haven't come there and checked it out. I mean, whenever I hear any friends say that, or just people say that in general, I actually smile more than anything else because we've been so fortunate to have gotten quite a bit of, business, and people have been really enjoying it. And whenever my friends say, "Oh, I still haven't come. Sorry that we haven't come. We promise we'll come," I always say, well, I'm really hoping that we're going to be around for a couple years. You've got plenty of time to come, and you just reminding me that there's still so many people out there who still have an opportunity to come. So there's still such a big customer base to try and reach, and there's still so much more to do. It's that constant reminder that in those first few weeks when it's gone so well, it wasn't just all your friends or whatever that came. It's people who generally just from all over have been coming. There's still so many
We're
there
just
out there. So I'm
curious.
constantly always seeing that potential of how do you access that if you haven't even like completed the base of the people that you know or that are your friends or that you're close to. So I think that's something I always just love putting out there. Ooh, we're losing you right now. Am I the only one that's struggling to see Jess, guys? Jess, you back? Okay, I got you, no problem. So Buns Out, are you good? We can't hear you. Hello? We can't hear you, but we can see you now. Yeah, we can. I can see you, but I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, yes. And now you have a 5-second delay. So whatever I'm saying, you're going to get later. Yes, that's fine. You can disconnect and reconnect. That's all good. All right, I'm just going to reconnect Jess, guys. Sorry about that. You see this thing, got DSTV, yeah, Instagram at this time. All like everyone is on, so it keeps intercepting connections. Yeah, Coyote, I could have done some lip reading there. You're right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. We got you back. Yeah. I have no idea what would
Ah,
have happened to
cool.
you there. So,
We need to talk to Instagram about the fact that like they need to adjust their user interface or something because I don't think the world is going to use Instagram the same way anymore. And now
absolutely.
everybody's just hogging the space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
What
no.
were
I
you
was saying
saying?
right now that it feels like we're on some cable channel. As soon as you go on at all times, there's always all these different lives to choose from. Which one am I going to watch today? So the
Yeah.
purpose behind it for me was firstly taking that risk, fulfilling a lifelong dream. I always said that I always wanted to open a restaurant. I've always loved
Yeah.
food. I have always admitted to eating it a whole lot better than I cook it, but I've always loved food as a whole. And I always just dreamt of
Yeah.
owning a restaurant. I always said I'd do it, but before the age of 30. And
Yeah.
I I was always kind of holding back. I'd speak to different restaurateurs, and I'd go to restaurants and I'd see how they do things. And I'd travel and I'd go to different places that I'd go to, and I'd see why I always choose to go to this place and that place. And I'd take stuff back from there, and I'd see, and I'd try to work out, how would I start this? I love this atmosphere. I love the what is created around here, but I also it's just reassuring me that I really want to do this. And
Yeah.
I decided to take that risk, take that plunge, face that fear of, always hearing restaurateurs saying to me, "Don't do it. It's the worst decision you can make. It takes over your whole life.
Yeah.
Just it's an intense thing, and you will just be rigorously working nonstop. It becomes your baby that you just can never grab a hold of, and there's so many different people that you have to worry about that get involved, and it comes with so much responsibility." But I just still wanted to do it. And I used to have this conversation with a friend of
Mm.
mine, and we kind of, when he was ready to, we decided, this would be a good time to start it and to go into it. And that's kind of where it was born. It was my one of my best friends from pre-primary school. We've known each other since we were 6 years old, and he also always wanted to open a restaurant, and he had a little bit of experience in that industry. In fact, a lot of experience in that industry. And when you start something, one of the things you do want to do is, so it's not good enough, having that drive and the determination and the knowing of exactly how you want to do it. You want to be able to combine that with another set of skills of people who know exactly, who have the expertise in that sort of field, and you can bring those things together and get, and get a whole lot better in that regard. Apparently, we're both frozen, but I can see you just fine, and you can see me just fine, right?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can see you. I can hear you. I think
Cool,
perhaps as
perfect.
we continue,
It's all
maybe
good.
it
It's
will.
all
Yeah.
good. Okay, great. I think everyone's having different connection issues. So, upon taking this plunge, you know, the journey with it, people don't know, but it originally started with the idea of starting a pizza joint. Whenever I used to travel, I used to always either go to a pizza joint, or a burger joint, or some kind of restaurant that I might want to try that has a traditional meal of wherever I am. But I always just loved how they
Yeah.
did it there. One of the things that would bug me here in South Africa is that you go to any restaurant and you look at the menu and you've got, geez, 60 items on the list, and you're trying to figure out what it is that you
Mm.
want to have. You get a little bit of
What is the
anxiety because there's
specialty
there's too
here?
much too many decisions to make. There's no specialty. We love that.
Yeah.
So many of our restaurants, I'd say 90%, 95% are like that. So deciding on which one you go to is always just the flipping of a coin, 50-50. It could be anyone. There's no real thing that you are going for, because each time you
Yeah.
go back, you end up deciding on the same thing anyway, because you don't know what to pick and you're left with those moments again. And you kind of realize that we
And
don't
everyone's
have
trying to
enough.
master everything. Everyone's trying
Yes.
to do fish and burgers and pizzas
So
and everything and
so
not
you go to a
focusing on
steakhouse,
one thing.
here, and they definitely make fish. You go to a seafood place, and they definitely make curry. And if you go to,
Yeah.
it's just that kind of thing. Like they all try to do everything, and it was kind of just that thing of, there's no doubt, sure, a lot of those places do that really well. I just wanted to. Um, we just want to do something where it was really focused and give people very limited choice, because we want to specialize in this and provide an environment where people can feel like they know what they're coming for. They love the atmosphere. It
Mm.
feels like it's a place for them. It takes them out of their comfort zone again from where they would usually go to. It's not the usual burger joint. It's not the usual fast food. They never really offered much quality at fast food places
Yeah.
when it comes to burgers. And it was just about creating a place that feeds the environment, the culture, a place that people can love coming to, really good quality burgers, good locally sourced ingredients, as best as we could, as healthy as we could to a certain extent, and then at the same time making it something that's really relaxed, unpretentious, but also good value for money, because we have massive burgers, and we wanted to create them to also be good value for money. There was small things I'd look at, like um, one of the things that always annoyed us was you go to some places and you order a burger, and the burger comes and you're waiting for the chips, but they say, no, you have to order the chips separately. So small things like that where you are getting
Oh
it with that,
no.
and
Hate that.
but really
Hate
creating
that.
creating
Should be a standard. They should come with burgers. It's
uh,
like No, they have to come
Absolutely.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess just creating an environment where you are essentially going for a burger something slightly more upmarket with enough options across people's palates. We've got 12 different burgers you can choose from, a few meat options, a couple
Yeah.
fish options, and then we have 4 vegan options. So we really try to cater for everyone. And what we
For
found is that
everyone.
it's been such a hit across the board that even a lot of our meat eaters are loving our vegan burgers, and we're getting our vegans coming back so often because they have more options for vegans. It's not just one dry vegan patty that comes from a standard supermarket where it's always the same kind of veggie burger. We're making a lot of our own different variations. It's not just a mushroom that's put in there because usually you just get a big mushroom with 2 buns on it and then that's it.
Like,
And try to give you as much variation to just kind of show just
yeah.
how different people's flavors and tastes are. So that's kind of all the purpose behind that, and it's really just once again based on creating an environment for people where they feel comfortable, they want to come back, they enjoy the service they get, they enjoy the food that they get, and that's just so fulfilling. I think more than anything else, with any drama that can happen with what happens behind the scenes, or have people, have your customers in there as well, and have certain issues here and there. It's always about how do I take that advice that you've given me, take in your opinion, no matter how
Mm.
ridiculous it may be. If it affects you, then it affects me. I get people all the time, and this is one key thing I just really want to say. I get people all the time who, I say all the time, sometimes, because it doesn't happen all the time, but I get people sometimes who come and maybe something goes wrong. Maybe there's something up with the service. Maybe there's something that happens with their meal. Things happen. Like we try to keep it as perfect as possible every single time, but obviously it's
Yeah.
not humanly possible. People have their off day. Something happens in the back kitchen. Someone might not be on form. Something may have just been swapped around. Whatever it might be, things happen. But people will come. Well, I'll go to people and I'll check around and I'll chat to my customers and I'll ask them how their meals are going, and 95%, 99% of the time they're loving it. But then that 1% who I can see really wants to say something can kind of get intimidated that I'm the one asking, and they can be very afraid of telling me
Yeah.
and being honest, and be very worried about hurting my feelings. And I always just say, if you are afraid of hurting my feelings if something is wrong, then I'm afraid you're hurting my business. Because if I don't know what's wrong, then I can't be better. And if I can't be better, then I'll definitely go out of business over time, because I'm not, hitting a certain standard. I can't address what's just happened with you. And people then end up kind of, going back on um, social media, or they'll write a letter or
Social
something,
media.
and then I'll definitely always take that, and I really appreciate that. But I, more than anything else, when I'm there and I have people there, or my staff is there, I really love it when people go up to people and just go up to the staff and go up to the manager on duty and just say, I hated that. That was terrible. This was wrong. This was wrong. This is wrong. I ordered this. I ordered this. I ordered this. And don't worry about it. We'll look
Wow.
after you. We'll make up for it. We'll sort you out, and we can improve and be better from there. I think a lot of people are too afraid of taking criticism, and as a result, they end up holding back their ability um, to, I guess, reach the standards or reach the heights that they could possibly reach. And it's important to take certain criticisms, of course, with a pinch of salt. There may be some reasons why certain things didn't happen a certain way, and you already are addressing that. But it's good to be able to have that feedback and feed it back. If I look at my social media as a whole, I've never, ever, with all the trolls around, with all the people who will say as many negative things as they want, I've never, ever blocked someone just because I think it's a really negative environment, even though you think it's a positive
Not even
environment, a
one
really
troll?
negative environment. No. And I just think it's you kind of ignore those people, or the trolls, and they get over themselves. But with people who may have lots of negative criticism, or come across in a very hard way, come down on you in a hard way, or be mean or be rude, I think it's counterproductive to what you need to hear and the tools you need and the hits you need to take to be able to get stronger and be better at certain things. If you are going to put yourself in a mollycoddled bubble for you just to only hear the good about everything that you do. And that's what a lot of people generally do. They just want to hear the good things about them. They just want to be able to focus on that. And of course, it's great to surround yourself with positivity, but it's the same effect as just surrounding yourself with just yes men and yes people. It's never going to really allow you to consider the no and do better.
But when do you distinguish between, because that point that you made is so critical and so vital, that sometimes we're so afraid of being offended that we're not hearing something that could be the difference between your business being average and your business being amazing. But what is the difference between people who are just criticizing you for getting a kick out of it and taking that versus what you're saying, which is very important? And because I know that for a person in your position with a big profile like yours, could there be people who are just looking for something wrong? And how do you distinguish between the two? A good constructive criticism versus you're literally just looking and nitpicking at what I do?
That's always going to be the case. Just like a little bit of a funny anecdote about when we started Buns Out. The night I had announced it, so this is before we've even officially opened. The night or the evening I announced it on Twitter and Instagram, I think at like 6 p.m. Immediately, there was one person who reviewed Buns Out with 1 star on Google. We hadn't even opened yet. So there's always, and you're just thinking, how did you already give us a rating if you haven't even been here yet?
We haven't even been there.
And the thing is that people will always be like that. It's just one of those things that if anything, I find that it makes you work around that a lot better. It makes the thickness of your skin a whole lot better. It puts people's criticisms into perspective a whole lot better. I think if you disguise yourself and hide yourself from any of that, when you face it in the real world, away from our screens and everything, you will not know how to deal with it at all. The haters are always going to be there, but it's about not paying them much mind. I've always answered any kind of there's a big difference between criticism and hate, but I've always answered any kind of hate, which is obviously far more drastic, with just stepping things up and quietly working along my way. And my thing is always just being in a pursuit of quiet excellence. Whatever comes up, whatever I make happen, whatever I achieve, whatever I manage to break into, whatever might leave you confused as to when did he find the time or make the time to do that? Where did that come from? We didn't see that coming. Like that's a form and where my answers come in. It takes far more effort and far more positive energy from you to constantly be answering to other people. It makes no sense at all. And for me, it just takes up too much of that time, that valuable time, when we already have, such limited time in a day to do the things that you'd love to do, that you're just going to continue to hold yourself back. And if you're going to have all those little things that are, when each time they're being told, you just kind of feel yourself being pulled back, you'll never be able to actually fully move on. And I think if anything, it's rare that they kind of even tap my shoulder, but I'll always acknowledge them and then just kind of keep it moving. And I love watching I love watching that morph over time, as people will kind of say, oh, I actually always thought this about you, and I used to say this and I used to say that, but okay, fine, fair enough. You've made your point, and now I'm a believer. Yeah. And for me, it's just like my biggest thing, and I appreciate every single person that has backed me in anything that I've done, every single fan or follower or loved one, whoever it might be. But when people say, okay, now I believe you, now I can see that you're the real deal. Literally none of that. I don't care about any of that. My biggest thing is always, do I believe me? And that belief is so important. Like, whatever I'm doing, do
Yeah.
I believe me? Do I believe that it's truly me? Do I believe that this is who I am? Do I believe that this is a representation of myself as Masejo Maponyane, you know? And do I feel like this is the essence of who I am? Am I living my truth? And if that answer is constantly yes, literally nothing else can waver you or shake you in any way.
So how have the rules of the lockdown and the infrequent, not even infrequent, the banning of the movement of people, basically, how has that impacted this thing that is so important to you? I mean, the way you speak about Buns Out, it doesn't sound like some business entity. It sounds like something that you've put your effort into and in every detail, and now kind of feels like it's not that the business was wrong, but this just the timing of 2020. I mean, who would
Yeah.
have thought that right now this would be the context in which businesses have to survive? So how has the lockdown impacted your business, and how have you guys responded to it?
Yeah, it's impacted us in a really big way, and that's why I was saying earlier that like there's that little or little to medium percentage of life that is also in a big way chance and luck. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you have this kind of situation, what can you do? You know, you've laid down what you thought you laid down which was a good business to be able to improve and get bigger if necessary and keep building that foundation to see where it ends up going. And we've had to just kind of roll with that, realize what's happening, have that moment of well, we're gonna have to be very close to you know have to be very close to closing down if this goes on for too long. That's the sad part. We're already at the moment where we are going to have to possibly let a couple people go, and that's hard enough already. If it goes on for even longer, because we still have to pay certain overheads, we still have to pay rent, then we're going to have to look at how long we can even stay open. So now, once you've had those little moments, it's okay, great. So what are we going to do to prevent all of that? What are the possible ways that you can reinvent your business and adapt in these times for yourselves to stay afloat? How are you going to be able to do it in different ways? And that's what we working on right now. So we've been affected in a big way. Of course, we've all had to close our doors as restaurants. We closed a few days before the initial shutdown because we wanted to make sure that we looked after our staff as much as possible and kept a safe environment and didn't want to be people who are creating an environment for this disease to continue to spread. So we closed early, and we've just been hoping that everyone else will stick to the lockdown rules so that we can all get back out there a whole lot sooner rather than later. And while we're doing that, we're thinking, cool, when we go back, places like restaurants and casinos and movies, entertainment places, those will probably be some of the last places to actually open and ever get back to normal. It's going to be a long time. High intensity social interaction. It's still going to be dangerous for a while. We won't be able to stop any of this until there is a treatment or there is a vaccine. And until that time, which is projected to be by the end of the
In
first quarter of
2021,
next year.
2022.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
at best, it would be first quarter of next, at best. And so how do we adapt in these times? And that's what we're looking at in different ways. And I think instead of just like giving up and just thinking, okay, well, that's a wrap, as we've seen quite a few people do, now it's, all right, so how do we then prevent us from compromising people's safety in these times and making people feel comfortable to dine? And how do we approach that? So is it going to be joining a whole bunch of delivery services and creating delivery for them? Is it going to be opening not actual restaurants where people go to, but is it going to be opening production kitchens, dark kitchens where you're making the food for people and you're delivering it to them in certain areas so that you've got enough of a spread so that you can reach your customers who would have come anyway, and that way keeping a business and keeping it in their homes and keeping those cravings subsided? Because we've had quite a few people ask, when how can they make make one? What are the exact ingredients? They're missing it or whatever it might be. And there's always lots of different ways to think about it. And that's what we're working on right now. And we will fight tooth and nail to ensure that we stay open and we can continue to operate. So, yeah.
And you know, as you were speaking, I'm so glad that you guys have already started thinking in a solution-driven way. Like you're not thinking about it as the end of the world, but you're already thinking, okay, where can we go? What can we do? Can we
Yeah.
crawl? Can we walk? Can we run? You know, what's next creatively? Now, with that creative thinking in mind, and what the president's interventions have been, you know, for small businesses and the things that he announced on Tuesday. What are your feelings on those, and do they impact you as an entrepreneur? Do they inspire you, or do they make you think, oh my word, we have to go back to the drawing board?
I'm really, really sorry, but you cut off for a split second there for me, so I'm going to need that question again.
Okay, I'll try to phrase it because I was a
Sorry.
little bit in the zone.
I could see you were
But in a
flowing there.
nutshell,
You were in the
basically,
zone.
I was flowing. I had my flow. But, you know, with when the president announced, you know, a lot of the interventions that he's going to do economically, there was so much response. I mean, people worry about their taxes, their businesses. Like, do those interventions, have they made you, okay, there's room to breathe, we're going to make it? Or is it flip, we've got to get to the drawing board, we've got to think fast? Feeling Ben about the government's interventions?
Look, first and foremost, I just want to say, fellow South Africans, that this is compatriots. This is, I couldn't think of a more difficult time to be a president anywhere around the world. And in that regard, South Africa has gotten incredible acclaim and great praise for how well we've managed this lockdown. Of course, there's been a number of things that have gone wrong that could have gone a whole lot better, but how well we've managed to keep the infection rate as low as we have, and have done as many tests as we have. To be fair, we've still only done, I think it's 130,000 or 128,000 tests by today, and we've only got a 2% infection rate, which is in fact, I think it's like 1.9% infection rate now, which is far lower than any other, you know, kind of country that is in relatively speaking, and how we're moving our lockdown, how we are limiting certain things, how we are restricting so many things. Obviously, that's making it so much harder to rebuild our economy. And the reality is that when we went into a lockdown, lots of people don't even realize this. And when I'm having this conversation, I get quite surprised. But the reality is that when we went into the lockdown, we were already in a recession. And we were already wailing and trying to get some sort of a lifeboat to get us out of the situation, some sort of reinvigoration, be it through leadership, through great economical structure that has been, you know, formed around our economy, for businesses, for entrepreneurs, for employees across the board, but still, you know, ensuring some sort of dignity of life with our minimum wage rates we saw come into play from the 1st of March this year. There's been trying to find that balance of ensuring that people can both live a dignified life, but at the same time help to put enough in the economy and build our own local economy, and of course ensure that we are we're keeping our exports as something that is as much of a need as possible to continue to go out there and bring in less imports, and supporting as much local as possible, and building our township economies and supporting those as much as possible. In South Africa, when it comes to a lockdown, it is the ultimate conundrum of what do you do when you have the country that is the most unequal country in the world. You have so many little nuances to look after, especially when you don't have a surplus of money in your government to be able to, you know, just distribute it around and help people with a stimulus package that does not require you to have to go and lend money. We're already in so much debt. We've just been downgraded by both Moody's and Fitch and Poor's. We have all these things, and now we effectively and fundamentally have started going into a depression beyond a recession. Now we are in a depression, and we're just going to get even worse. We have an economy that looks like it's going to contract because of what we're doing right now, because we can't get out there and work. I think there were only projections of us growing at like 2% this year. Now, because of what's happened, we're going to contract by about 10%, right? So minus 10%.
Yeah.
And for us to try and keep up with paying off our loans and keeping the economy going, and and be able to keep a structure across all departments, then we need to grow by another 4%. We need to grow by 4%. We haven't been able to do that in the last few years. There's so
It's
much
a
to be done,
painful
right?
reality.
So,
It's extremely painful. It
so
feels
as the president,
debilitating. We have hope, but
yeah,
it's
yeah, 100%.
chill. It's hectic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as
So
the president, it's not as simple as just saying, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. The problem with something like Corona is that it moves with us. There's no way of just suppressing it, from just hiding um, from it. You need to completely block all your interactions with other people, and you need to figure out how this thing is going to die out, either to a point where it has no more hosts to go to, so enough humans have got it, and have been infected and have become immune that now it can't travel anywhere else, so it eventually dies out. That's like worst case and last option for kind of everyone, because then you just kind of say, okay, everything goes back to normal. Everyone's going to inevitably get it. Lots of people will die anyway. Let's just see how we go. With South Africa, you're also balancing that with millions of people that have got TB, 7 million people that have got AIDS. You've got so many different
half of our
illnesses,
population
and
falling in the poverty line.
exactly. And now you're facing the risk of South Africa after this probably being at, I would now predict, after this, we will maybe be at a 52% unemployment rate once all is said and done. And then you're starting a whole other problem altogether. And it's this balance that President Ramaphosa has to strike of, it's tough because it can't really be a trade-off, but it has had to be a trade-off, but it's lives versus livelihoods. What do you do?
Yeah.
And you want to save lives. There's no way of repairing that. We can repair livelihoods, but the problem is that people are suffering out there so much, and people will continue to suffer and struggle, that who's to say if we get that wave that we're supposed to get that hits us, and we have to do all of this again, and we're already languishing in everything that's happening because businesses haven't opened in a long time or functioned in a long time, that it's quite scary in our case that things are so bad and could be so bad that there's going to be damage both from COVID and post this, where even more lives will also be lost because people are suffering so much. And it's such an unfair thing to, it's such a horrible trade-off to try and make. And it's clear what we need to do, but it's also so completely unclear what we need to do. And now we're kind of left with no option. We're going to have to borrow money from the IMF, from the World Bank. With this 500 billion rand is not even sadly going to be the tip of the iceberg for how much is needed. 500 billion rand is, what's that, $25 million, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? I think it's around $25 million. And America had a $3 trillion stimulus package, like first round, and then another $2 trillion stimulus package. You don't want to know how much that is in rands. You won't have enough numbers to be able to actually say that.
These governments are going to start speaking about gazillion. We are going to
No,
make our country gazillion, trillion, million. And while mentioning the part about suffering, Maps, I hear that you're doing some amazing work with Each One Feed One initiative. So, what's so enriching about this conversation is that you've got a balance of the things that are needed for the country right now, and you mentioned the fact that, look, it's going to get rough and livelihoods are at stake. I keep hearing in Cape Town about malls in the Mitchells Plain area and within that region that are being looted. And
Mm,
people are going on like, yeah, no, it's gangsterism. And I'm like, no, guys, it's hunger. People are
mm.
hungry. There's a serious problem of starvation at the moment. And when I heard that you're doing this work, you know, I was really touched by it. So can you tell us more about it? And then just, you know, how us as South Africans can be more mindful in the way that we think about this crisis and how we identify with other people suffering.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I always try and draw a perspective that even being on lockdown as a whole is a privilege. It's not something that everyone is able to do, especially in the South African context. It's not something that everyone is able to partake in comfortably without
Mm.
too much stress being upon them. Our townships, our rural areas are overcrowded, overpopulated. You have, 4 to 10 people living in one tiny area of space, and they're expected to stay there nonstop and not be able to move around everywhere. You tell them that they need to wash their hands to be able to keep this
With
disease
what
at bay.
water?
With what water? And then you say, well, alternatively, hand sanitizer with what money? There's all those kinds of things
Yeah.
that you have to kind of consider, and then you really start to realize just how lucky you are more than anything else. And if you look at how South Africans work, for the most part, the majority, literally, the majority lives hand to mouth. So whatever comes in at that moment is all I've got for the month. Then we've got a large population of ours are casual workers. So, giddy piece job. They just have these piece jobs. You always see them. You can find them kind of anywhere, be it outside a hardware store or on the street. They want to do anything for you, or maybe they're domestic workers, whatever it might be. They're just hoping that that day they can get some work so that they can feed themselves for the next day or the next 2 days. Try and now work out how you're going to live with nothing for a year. Sorry, but well, a year. Imagine for a week, and then how are you supposed to survive for 2 weeks? How are you supposed to survive for 3, 4, 5 weeks? It's just absolutely ridiculous. And just your It's doing that thing again. We now have another delay, and we can't hear you. It's gone back to what it was like before. But yeah, absolutely. Do it again. Do it again. Go in and out. All good. Okay. Let's see what's happening here. There we go. That's working again. What's this talk about a book?
Stu,
Jess,
these
you're
gremlins are
back.
next
Okay.
level. They're
Jess,
actually next level, yeah.
I just quickly wanna address something. I just saw a comment now from I Like Sean, who says comparing the USA stimulus package and South Africa is laughable. They have a population of 389. No, it's not about comparing it. It's just comparing the fact that, so if you look at that relative to the USA, just on the last point, um, you can't compare it because they're a first world and we're a third world. What I'm trying to say is we have so many things against us already, being a third world country, being the most unequal country in the world, not having enough money, being in grave debt. We don't have the luxury of being in America, a superpower like that, that has $3 trillion, that ends up, I think they've had 25 million job claims over the last month right now, and they've given each of those people amounts ranging from $600 to $1,200 to be paid for that month, right?
Yeah.
And $600 to $1,200 is right now you're looking at 12,000 Rand to 24,000 Rand. That's the range that they're being paid. To give you like that kind of like perspective of how, you know, we're really struggling. We're doing whatever we can so that people can survive, but we can really just offer you 350 Rand. And that's why it's been so incredible to have seen the leadership from the president still
That
being
was the
so
point that
firm
you were making.
and so affirming despite
Yeah.
everything that is happening. And you know, he's got everything stacked up against him. It's the toughest time to lead any country right now, but it's especially tough to try and lead our situation, and see how you manage that. And he's done an incredible job, and there's only so much you can do. So me saying that we're gonna really suffer and it's going to be a big struggle is that, you know, his hands are kind of tied. Our options are limited, and we're just going to have to see how well we can ride it out and start from scratch when we have effectively hit rock bottom, which is kind of close to where we are right now.
Yeah. You know, Maps, this conversation has really been, I think, just wonderful in we've covered so many parts, and I know if we keep going, I mean, this conversation might not end, because speaking about purpose and the things that drive you and motivate you, coupled with context and the action of implementing whatever you believe in and what you are proud of, you know, it's a
Mm.
journey in itself. And I wanted to ask you just, what are your last thoughts about purpose that you'd like to leave with everybody, just before, you know, we wrap up? And I know that you're going to be doing, you know, some other things with the Change Collective, but what would your thoughts on that be?
Um, in this kind of situation, there's so many places you can take those thoughts because people are experiencing a lot of fear right now, and it's a fear of the unknown. You know, what's going to happen next? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to have to close down my business, or lose my business, or am I, you know, I mentioned the other day, am I going to lose my mind in this whole process?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think just try and always keep as much perspective as possible. Figure out in what way you can do the absolute best for you to survive. How right now will you be able, once this lockdown is over, to try and future-proof your be it your business or your employment? How do you make
Yeah.
yourself just that much more employable? And if not, then how are you going to be able to think of something to start that you've always wanted to try and be able to do something while you don't have employment, or do something for the sadly like the bare minimum so that you can just learn enough for you to build onto that thing and just gain through experiences. Um, yeah, I think it's really just to keep as much of that focus and that faith, as much of that as possible,
Yeah.
but also at the same time, you know, keep thinking of ways that you can possibly, you know, cover yourself in terms of how hard well, in terms of how you're willing to figure it out for yourself. We're all gonna have to figure it out for ourselves, sadly. It's a very unique and precarious time that doesn't that no one really holds the answers to. But I'd say just don't be, you know, don't be in any way despondent, because we literally are all going through it. And I think through that, if you can keep that compassion and kindness as a collective all together, I feel like we'll all make a plan for each other in the end. And we'll
Yeah.
all, through this, realize just how much we do need one another to be able to just live and exist, you know. And it's a lot of people are going to suffer, and we're going to need to lean on each and every one of each other to be able to get through all of this. It's not an easy time, and I think that kindness and compassion is going to go a really long way.
Yeah, I see there was a comment here by Tato who's saying a book, Maps, a book. And I think everything
Nah.
that you said today is worthy of that. And Maps, thank you so much for your time today, hey?
Thank you very much, sis. I really, really appreciate it. To the people that are saying a book, yeah, I definitely haven't learned enough at all. I've got
Yeah.
a long way ahead of me. I always kind of believe if you're writing a book on kind of like your life and stuff like that um, before
The
40,
biggest
you know,
things that
as in
happen.
a full memoir. There's still so much still to come. And so it kind of
Yeah.
just ends up being a vanity project that you should probably stay away from.
Yeah, maybe I don't know if not a book, then maybe just another thread on Twitter for now. I don't know.
I mean, we'll see. But I will mention that I am considering writing a book, but it's not the kind of book that you think it would be.
Ah, okay. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. Maps, can I
Yes.
ask you
Jess, thank you
this
so much.
favor?
You're amazing.